Hey folks, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Um, I might want to try something really quickly. What I tried to do is set up breakout groups ahead of time that have you guys working in your working groups. And I just want to do a quick test of that. And actually, I think what I want to do is make Maddie and Rowan co-leaders of this thing first so that they can help me out. Um, let's see. Yes, okay. More. Make co-host. Okay, Matt, you are now a co-host, which means you can potentially move people among groups, which may prove necessary. Is everyone logged on through their Oberlin account? Because that's going to be key today. You're not going to end up in a breakout group. If you are not, dump yourself from Zoom and come back in, making sure you are logged on as an Oberlin student. Because if you aren't, it's just going to be a mess. It won't work because your groups are kind of based on you being logged on through your Oberlin account. That's how I set up the groups. It knows you only by you being an Oberlin account. And so what I want to do as just a quick test, because Maddie and Rowan may be able to help solve this problem, is I want to create a breakout room, and I want you to simply pop into it and then immediately pop out and come back to the main room, just so we can test whether this works, so that we don't totally totally do this. So I'm going to open breakout groups, but just jump in and get in and then get right out. Don't do anything in the breakout groups. Just come right out. So here we go. Hopefully you guys received invites. Is that true? None of you received an invite. Oh, that really stinks. I'm trying this new feature, which is supposed to sort of set you up to be in groups ahead of time. None of you got an invite?
No.
All right. Rowan and Maddie, you guys are going to, what I'm going to do is nuke all the breakout groups. Rowan, have you set up breakout
Wait,
groups?
some people's worked.
Some people's did work.
Yeah, Alyssa, Phoebe, and Zetza.
You guys all had it working. The rest of you did not see a breakout group for yourself?
And so did Leah, Liz, Julia, Evie. No, Evie didn't. So I didn't get an invite. Maddie, did you?
You guys wouldn't have gotten invites because I didn't put you into breakout rooms. So neither
Okay.
of you would have gotten invites because you guys aren't in a breakout room. But everyone else should have gotten an invite. No one got that?
Mm-mm.
People must be logged on in different ways somehow because according to Octet, this is supposed to work. But listen, probably the easiest way to do this, the cleanest way to do it, is for me to just nuke the existing breakout rooms completely. And what I'm going to ask, Rowan, have you set up rooms before, breakout groups before?
Yes, here and there.
Okay, because here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to nuke the existing breakout groups, and I want you to create 10 breakout groups, and I want you to create them based on group membership. And Maddie, do you have your hands on the group membership document? Can you get that up, the one that has everyone's groups?
I'll grab that.
You know, you can use there's a link in what I created for today that has the groups in it. That's, the interview document, that has all the groups in it, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to need to sort of take people and set them up in those groups. And since both of you guys are co-presenters, you can do that, but don't start the breakout groups. Just stick them in those groups. Does that make sense? But I think the first thing I need to do is clear breakout rooms closed. Let me just see this. I need to recreate all rooms. manually assign. Okay, so there are 10 breakout groups now, and you can put people in them. Do you guys know what you're doing? Because I'll go ahead and start if you guys are cool with that.
Yeah.
Are you guys both cool with that?
I've never created a breakout room before.
Well, if you send the link to Maddie, she can probably do it. They can do it. If you go into the breakout rooms, what you want to do, Maddie, is you want to go into the breakout rooms button, and then it's got these assign things on it when you open it up. And when you click assign, you just put check marks next to people who are in the same groups. Can you see that?
No, I don't know where the breakout room.
On the bottom of the panel, it may be under more or maybe under breakout rooms, depending on how wide you've made your screen.
Would you mind making me a co-host again?
Did you become a non-co-host?
Yeah, I had to log in on my computer.
Okay, hold on.
Some
I'm pretty
technical
sure
issue.
only the main host can make breakout rooms. I'm not sure.
I've done this before, and the co-hosts have been able to do it. So that hasn't been a problem in previous iterations of this. Let me just see though, Rowan, where the heck are you?
Yeah, I don't think that I have the ability to do it. Maybe it's
Rowan, I can't see you. Who did you log on as? Because nothing's showing up under Rowan.
Rowan Hannon. I'm here. I swear. Switch to speaker view and you should be able to see me. I am speaking. Here I am.
Yeah, but you're not in my darn list. Hold on here, let me try this. Sorry guys, I'm just hopelessly mired in technology, but you are now, oh, I can make you, you know what, just in case that statement about co-host is right, maybe I made someone else the host. Who wants to, which of you should I make hosts? Because I can only make one of you hosts.
I think Rowan, I think that the reason why I can't do breakout rooms is because I don't have a professional Zoom account.
Right, okay. I'm going to make Rowan the host. And Rowan, Maddie, you're going to have to help Rowan figure out where the names are to put people into groups. Okay. Okay. Sorry about this, this thing. So Rowan is now the host. And so Rowan, you can,
Breakout rooms.
although actually, Rowan, now that you're host, you need to allow me to share my screen.
Okay, sure. So it looks like there's already some people in breakout room. There's groups here.
Right, but you're going to need to move people around and assign people to groups. You're going to need to go into that because for some reason it didn't work when I set it up. I was promised by Octet this would all work, but it doesn't work.
Sounds about right. Okay, I got it. You can start up.
Okay. All right. Sorry about the slow start here, but we're going to get going. And I'm really excited. You guys have already sort of met my two co-presenters for the day, who I'm super excited to be working with. Rowan Hannon is the Environmental Dashboard Project Manager, works full-time for the project. Rowan, you want to say a couple words about yourself since they haven't seen you?
I was there for the workshop the other day.
Oh, right.
You
Okay.
haven't seen me.
So you've met Rowan, and you've met Maddie. So they need no further introduction. Our goal today is essentially to get you guys into a position where you're ready to begin working on your projects. And in order to do that, we're mostly going to talk about community voices today, but I'm going to give you just a little bit of context, which hopefully most of which you gleaned from the readings about the sort of larger project in which community voices is embedded, which is Environmental Dashboard. So Environmental Dashboard, as you read about hopefully for today, is both a technology and an approach that is explicitly designed to reveal the sort of resource flows, environmental conditions within communities, and connect those with what people in the communities are doing to bring about positive change within those communities. And, Oberlin, the city of Oberlin has been our pilot community, but we have projects going on in a number of different communities, including our biggest other one, which is in downtown Cleveland, which we can talk about at some point, but is not the discussion of today's discussion. Like any big project, this has lots of supporters and funders, and so the names you see on the bottom are sort of organizations and entities which are either direct collaborators or have provided financial resources to support this project. But so let me go right into kind of the nuts and bolts of what we're trying to do in today's workshop. So like I said, we'll provide a little bit of context on what Environmental Dashboard is, its goals, talk a little bit about community voices. Hopefully you enjoyed reading those papers, learning a little bit more about kind of some of the research that's going on community voices, and I'll say a couple things about other strands of research other than the paper you wrote. Talk a little bit about the specific goals, and we'll spend a lot of today actually talking about these core communication principles, which hopefully you looked at pretty carefully in the user's guide, because they're kind of critical to your task as interviewers and people developing content. So part of our main goal today is for me to talk about what I'm going to talk about, for Rowan and Maddie to talk about what they're going to talk about relatively quickly, so we give you guys practice with 3 exercises that are designed to get you really thinking about how the core communication principles relate to the work you're going to do and developing content. Why is my slide not advancing? All right, so here's some really broad context for what we're going to talk about today. The sort of big picture goal of the Environmental Dashboard project is to develop, implement, and assess communication technologies that use information feedback to motivate and empower positive social, ecological, and economic transformation. And in many ways, we've talked about this idea of systems thinking. The technology at some level is really designed to promote systems thinking and action within communities. So systems thinking, as you guys now hopefully really understand, is a way of thinking about and conceptualizing the world that focuses on relationships and interdependencies. A systems thinker is someone who sees themselves as an integrated part of a larger whole. And that sort of corollaries to that, we're trying to foster a sense of connectedness and belonging between people and the environmental, social, and economic place in which they're located, trying to situate individual decision-making in a larger community context, sharing and celebrating pro-environmental thought and action. And hopefully as you do the readings both for today and for Thursday, in which we're going to have special guest Cindy France in our class, and we will be back in the classroom, you'll have a better understanding of why sharing and celebrating pro-environmental thought and action is really an important way to bring about change. At the end of the day, we do want to make sure that change is actually happening, positively change behavior and advance sustainability and community resilience. So that's really big context for what we're trying to do. And I think when you're working on a project, it's very important to sort of circle back to what are the big goals and ask yourself the question, is what I'm doing actually achieving those larger goals? Because it's very easy to get sort of caught up in the weeds of a project and lose track of what the point is. And I think it's very, very important to, as they say, the mantra in environmental studies, think globally, act locally when you're working on things. So we're going to talk a bit more about some of the other components of Environmental Dashboard. So I'm really not going to do anything today except say that what they are and that they exist. There are 4 key elements to the technology. One is Building Dashboard that monitors and displays resource flows within individual buildings. Another one is called Citywide Dashboard. It sort of monitors city-level resource flows, very much designed to situate you in a systems thinking context. Community Voices, what we're going to talk about today, these sort of slides that look really simple. They combine words and images and have little statements drawn from interviews with community members. And then there's a community calendar component. It's also a very important way of connecting people within communities and building a stronger sense of community. Not going to talk about that today at all. How does this information get out there? Some of you may have noticed, a little harder to notice this year because of the realities of COVID and how sequestered you guys are. But there are 21 digital screens installed throughout the community, public library, Oberlin Community Services, all the public schools, the hotel, lots and lots of places. You've probably seen these in a few storefronts at least in town. And then there's also a website, which won't talk more about today. But the idea is to put this content in people's face, in their space. So the digital signage we see is absolutely critical to having a psychological impact on the Oberlin community. And I should mention that the Oberlin community is now actually paying us to do what we do in the city of Oberlin. We have a contract with the city of Oberlin to promote their climate action plan using Environmental Dashboard. There's another part of this technology which we are definitely not going to talk about more today, but which you will have the experience of working with to sort of analyze data on resource flows through your dorms. It's called Building OS. We'll not say more about that today, but it exists and you will experience it in a fun exercise we do later. All right, so I love feedback diagrams. Here's a feedback diagram with nice little pictures in it. We have people, they're always making choices about the environment. And those choices are having an impact. They're making choices about resource flows, and the resource flows are having an impact on the environment. And the environment obviously affects the people who live within that environment. And for the most part, that information is not actually in a feedback. It's just in a causal chain, and there's no information getting back to people. So the project as a whole has been very much focused on trying to create feedback loops where none existed. This, as Donella Meadow says, is one of the most effective ways to bring about change. So you have to measure things before you can translate them into a form that means something, ideally to a non-technical public, which is most of us in this world. And we've done that with metering of resource flows. That's sort of the building dashboard component. We've added in metering at the whole city level. That's the citywide dashboard component. And today we're talking about this part that really focuses on what real people are doing and saying and thinking in a community. And that's the community voices part, where we sort of let people share their thoughts on what they're doing in a community. So that was like a super quick introduction to Environmental Dashboard and how community voices fits within that. I'm going to turn things over to Rowan to give you a little bit more depth on what the community voices component that we're working on today is designed to do. So Rowan, it's yours.
Okay.
And I'll just advance the slides as we go, because obviously I got it. We're getting feedback here. Let me just mute myself so that that's not.
Feedback from me. Or can you hear me okay? Okay. I don't know if it's like slow for me, perhaps. If you just advance like one slide.
Can you see the slides? Are they up in front of you? Can you see the slides? Are they up in front of you?
Okay. Again, I can just see community voices concept. So, okay, we're good. So, community voices concept, the basic idea is that we're combining words and images from community conversations to celebrate the thought and action that advances sustainability. So we have three main goals here. First is to celebrate the full diversity of a community. Second is to broaden perspective on what it means to be sustainable and a resilient community without necessarily using those terms. So kind of seeing what individuals think those terms are defined as. And third, we want to foster a pro-environmental shared identity. So a shared vision of a sustainable and resilient future for our community. There are actually 7 content categories right now that highlight how different groups within a community are contributing to this sustainability and resilient development. So the first is neighbors, if you would advance. And this category includes messages from members of a community who, through their personal examples, are promoting sustainable action in their homes, their backyards, their gardens, neighborhoods, etc. Those viewing this material see people like me. They see their neighbors, and ideally people they recognize exhibiting this pro-environmental and pro-community behavior, thus establishing and reinforcing positive social norms. For serving our community, the next category, this is the sustainability-related work of community organizations, public schools, and city government workers. So actually, John and Cindy do some research on whether being featured in these community voices slides, particularly serving our community, increases their sense of connection to the larger community. And I'm gonna let Maddie talk about some of the next categories too. Ooh, I'm in the next one. So heritage, this is images and words reflected of a community legacy of stewardship and engagement on important issues of each era. So Oberlin's particular legacy, as you may know, is co-education, civil rights, and often bicycles. We actually have a ton of historical photos of bicycles, and the Oberlin Heritage Center has generously given us a ton of historical photos. So this is some of my favorite content. And this is basically giving us the context to see how environmental challenges and leadership opportunities that a community is facing now has built on things that we've overcome or addressed in the past. And I'm going to let Maddie talk about our downtown.
So yeah, so our downtown, this category includes. Do you want to maybe mute yourself, Rowan? I think.
Yeah, Rowan, you need to mute.
Mute yourself. Sorry. Yeah, so this category includes commitments and environmental thoughts of those who own and work in local businesses. So as the quote says, we are a piece of the transportation puzzle and getting rid of cars and adding alternative sources. We like to ride bikes and so do you. So content for this section of the dashboard was developed by college students who conducted interviews of people who own or work in local businesses. And they found that many people who initially indicate that they do not see their work as being related to sustainability are, after a conversation, able to identify several actions that they are taking that move the community towards greater sustainability. So again, the goal here is to develop a sense of pride and ownership in positive environmental action and to encourage others to embrace this as well. And then the next topic or category is natural Oberlin, and this category includes images and words that relate to the natural and cultivated beauty of a community. So riding your bike is very spiritual, you're getting closer to nature. And the goal of this is to reinforce people's sense of connection to the natural and ecological world.
The next generation component features kids. So we made a real priority to sort of value people who are not necessarily heard within a community, and you know, kids are some of the most important voices on that. We also, as you hopefully read about in the paper assigned for today, set out with a hypothesis thinking that kids might have the capacity to communicate messages to adults, particularly on climate change, that the adults would find difficult to listen to or respond to constructively if delivered by other adults, you know, sort of crossing political barriers. And as you read about, our hypothesis on that was proven false, but it was a good hypothesis. It's important to recognize when you do research and conduct experiments when your experiments tell you that your ideas are wrong. But at any rate, we still think kids are really important as spokespeople on environmental issues. Adults respond to them and they certainly grab your attention. So just some content, some of the great content we got on kids there. The newest category we've added just this last year, actually, and with quite a bit of content developed by students in this class, is on climate action. And I mentioned to you that the City of Oberlin is actually funding us to work specifically on advancing the city's climate action plan. And this content, again, is specifically focused on trying to highlight the positive action that the city and individuals within the city are taking to address the problems of climate change in our community. We've done, as you know, quite a bit of research. I'm going to ask you to sort of electronically raise your hand if any of the following statements are true about you. So have you ever seen one of the 21 screens we have installed in the town? So you can electronically raise your hand if that's true. Well, I'm seeing like no hands. That's amazing. Oh, I see a hand. Kobe, you got your hand up. That's cool. I got a couple hands there. Okay, cool. I got a few hands there. Okay, raise your hand if you've ever watched one of these screens for at least 20 seconds. Oh, I'm getting some hands disappearing. Raise your hands if you think these screens have had an effect on your behavior. Well, amazingly, I am actually still getting some fingers up, and maybe it's because you read the papers for today. Because typically when people answer these questions, they say, no, I don't really look at those things. I don't really have an effect on my behavior. I don't think these are really impacting the community. And the important thing to recognize, and hopefully a message that got across in the readings, is what you think you're getting in from the world around you is actually pretty different from what you are taking in from the world around you. And some of the most effective messaging that influences your thought and behavior is messaging you may not be aware of taking in at all. And advertisers take great advantage of that, and people who are interested in making positive change in the environment have the opportunity to use the same social psychology, the same tools to alter people's behavior. So we have conducted a variety of research to try to address a set of questions about whether or not the content in these things is changing social norms. When I say social norms, it's very important that folks have an understanding of what I'm saying there. A social norm is your perception of what other people, oftentimes within the peer group that you sort of think about as being your kin, are doing and thinking. And it turns out social norms are the most important thing influencing your behavior, vastly more important than logic or rational information is what people around you are doing. Most people seriously underestimate how much they're influenced by social norms. So this question of are we impacting social norms and intention to act is kind of key. And the paper you had really addressed that with research we conducted using mostly a national sample, some sample in Oberlin. But we've also been very interested in Oberlin as well. And I didn't share any research directly on that with you, but we have done extensive surveys at the locations in which the screens were installed at 8 of the sign locations in 2014 before the screens were installed, and then 2 years after they were installed, and asked people lots of questions about the kind of content we intended to put on the screen. And then also, as I think Rowan briefly mentioned, we've also conducted research on the impact of being interviewed, the ongoing research. And, the basic summary, just the big picture summary, lots of detailed findings which are important, is that exposure significantly increases social norm perception, concern about environmental issues, and commitment to act. The 2 slides I have below are just an example of slides from the study you read about, in which we compared the same message delivered by kids and adults and found that kids were, alas, unfortunately not better spokespeople as we had thought they would be. But it gives you an example of how closely we tried to match the images so they were as controlled as possible for everything except age. Basically very similar photos, but they differ in age and their attribution. Anyway. You read a little bit about that. So again, one of the things we're really focusing on today is these core communication principles. And I'd asked you in particularly for one of the readings to very carefully examine the section of the Guide to Developing Community Voices that was explicitly focused on effective message development. And I actually am going to encourage you all to just sort of open that document and have it in front of you, because it's actually these 8 principles here that we want you to focus on throughout this workshop today as we go into the exercises. So we want you to be looking at these and trying to identify which of these principles are illustrated in content we show you, and then also trying to identify quotes from previous interviews that illustrate these principles. Because at the end of the day, this is what we're trying to do when we develop content for community voices. So again, these are just the same things I'm putting here, and I'm not going to talk about them much. You got them in front of you, and we're going to have you using them. But I'll just state what they are. Telling stories that are personal and local is a very effective way of developing strong of engaging people and then developing norms around those. Celebrating positive thought and action, particularly in the context in which we're delivering information. As Cindy France will probably talk about on Thursday, there is a place for negative information. It can be effective, but it's very hard to use. And the context we're doing stuff in, negative information is not going to work and not going to be appreciated. Featuring diversity is very, very important. If you want to elicit normative behavior, you need to make sure that everyone feels like their people are represented in what you're presenting, so that they feel like it's not about someone else, it's about me, or at least some of what's up there is about me. Again, this is a general statement that I've made for the other ones. Leveraging social norms and satisfying people's desire to belong to their group is really quite crucial. Turns out that one important element of social psychology that we understand is when people make commitments and goals to doing things, they're much more likely to do those things. And when people make statements about commitments and goals, they're more likely to do it, and people seeing those commitments and goals are more likely to also make commitments and goals to those things and then follow through. Another key psychological principle is emphasizing consistency in thought and action. So you show how doing something in one context that's good for the community or environment is consistent with other actions that are good for community and environment. It's also true, and I think this one gets overplayed a bit, but is also a useful thing to do, is appealing to self-interest and convenience as well as community. I mean, I think oftentimes our campaigns sort of focus on you should do this because it's in your economic best interest and it's a self-interested thing, and that's what we think is the principal motivator. It's a motivator, it's not the principal motivator, but if you can get it in there, it's good. And, you know, selecting images and text that collectively sort of engage, educate, motivate, and empower people. Good images that grab people's attention and relate to the quotes that you have are really quite important. Anyway, you've got the sort of detailed principles in front of you. I want you to keep that document with the principles on it open in front of you as we go into these exercises. Hopefully, hopefully Rowan has been able to construct breakout groups that contain our members. Rowan, have you been successful in your efforts to do that, or are you still working on that?
Yeah, everybody should be in the rooms they
Okay,
need to be in.
so here's
Rooms.
don't press yet. Don't press yes yet, Rowan. Let me just say a couple words about this, and then when I say go, if you could throw people into their groups, that would be wonderful. And I will say that Rowan and Maddie and I will be sort of circulating between groups, but we want you to work very efficiently because we're only giving you 5 minutes per exercise. So you will shortly be invited to go into a breakout group that is comprised of your group members, you know, say a quick hello to them. You've met them before, but this is your first experience working together on a task beyond the quiz. And so you're going to be in your breakout groups, and your first charge in this first exercise is to collaborate with your fellow group members to identify. There'll be a series of slides you're going to look at, and your group should start with your group's number. So if you are group number 7, you want to start with slide number 7. And your job is to figure out which core communication principles are illustrated by that combination of images and words. And you're going to jot that down below the slide. There's a space for you to fill that in. And which particular features of that core communication principle are best illustrated by that. Now, most slides will illustrate several principles together, so there may be several principles you're identifying, but try to figure out which ones is it really doing the best job of, and how is it doing those. And once you're done with that slide, move on to the next slide, which another group will have already worked on, and see if you can add different new ideas to what they've done. And we'll get as far as we can in the 5 minutes we give you. And I'd ask, there's one chat here. Let's just see what that chat is, see if there's a question here. How do we view the slides? Okay, so I sent you a link. That's a really good question. Let me get out of this for a second. There is a link within the assignment for, hold on, let me just get out of this thing. There's a link within the assignment which is very important that you have open right now. And I see that lots of you are open on this right now. So this is a link within, if you click on the link for today's class, it has a link to the training workshop. And so very important that all of you have open. So thank you very much for asking that question. And it links to everything we're doing today. So what you're going to do next is to click on this CV training exercise 1. And if you were in group 1, your slide is right here. And if you're in a later group, your slide is further down in that sheet. And so group number 1 is going to start by writing down what they think the core communication principles are right here under this bullet point. You guys have commenting privilege, so it'll show up in some color, and filling that in. So that was a very good question. Any other questions before we get started? All right. Give it a shot, Rowan. See if you can put people in groups. We're going to leave you in there for 5 minutes, and then Rowan's going to hit the exit button, and you're going to be sucked back into our main group. And then we'll talk about it and move on to the next exercise. Everyone good? You got this figured out, Rowan? I think you just.
Okay, I sent it, they should get an invite, and I can see they're joining.
Yeah, if we have some people left here in the main room with us, we may have to sort of physically move them.
Looks like people are joining. Almost everybody's there.
Yeah, it looks like because I gave you host status, that you are the only one who can control anything here.
Oh, so you guys aren't assigned to rooms, though?
No, we aren't. I think you may need to make us co-hosts again.
Okay, sure.
It looks like Nathaniel is having some trouble getting into a group. You may need to stick him into his group. Nathaniel, what's up with you? By the way, Ron, all that feedback is your computer. You got.
I'm sorry.
You're both scratchy and feedbacky.
I'm having issues over here. I'm barely holding on, but we're here. We're good. Okay, so you are co-host again, and I am going to mute myself and see what I can do about my computer.
Okay, so I'll time them. But I think you're gonna have to hit the button that sends them back, because I don't think I can do that. So yeah, let's see if I can. I'm going to see if I can migrate among groups, if I can figure that out. We should be able to do that, but I'm trying to figure out how. I don't seem to have, I don't know what Nathaniel's deal is. See if you can physically stick him in his group run when you get a chance, because I don't think I can do that. Yeah, I don't even see how I can migrate among groups. I thought I would be able to do that. Can you see that, Maddie?
Um, no,
It's
I
to
can't.
manually accept it. I can't move him myself. So he might just be.
You can't move him. Hey, Nathaniel, can you talk to us and tell us what's going on? You have to unmute yourself to do that, and maybe like turn your video on so we can see you. Maybe Nathaniel's not really there. Yeah, I just plain do not have anything related to to the breakout groups. Do you, Maddie? I just had got nothing.
No.
I just had got nothing.
I can make you host again.
I'm worried if you do that, it might fuck up the breakout groups. I just don't want to risk it. Were you guys okay at seeing my screen? Because I had this weird blob on my screen saying there's something on your screen. Were you seeing the blob on my screen?
No.
Okay, good.
I'm just no.
Okay, cool. They are 2 minutes into this. We may not be able to visit them, but that's not the end of the day. That doesn't. I don't think that's actually key. I thought we did. I thought we did good. Looks like they're doing good stuff.
Wow.
Nathaniel joined his group.
Oh, good. Maybe he was sleeping. Oh, good.
I bet you he was just sleeping.
I wonder what's going on with your feedback. It's like either you got 2 mics or you got an extra speaker. I think it's a speaker. I think you got a speaker turned on because I don't know. Well, I don't even know, but somehow. And it's also, I mean, it's exactly as it was yesterday, Ron. There's scratchiness too. You sound really scratchy.
I think my computer's just fucked up, to be honest with you. This nice futuristic computer that they gave me at CIT, it is not charging. It's like attached to power, but I'm holding it 1%, and it's making everything really slow, and I'm just like barely here. So
Barely hanging on.
yeah, I gotta take. Yeah, I gotta take it into the library, I guess. Again, I've already replaced the battery on this thing. Cool, you know.
I
Just
thought those
irritating
Macs were
sometimes.
supposed to be better builds than our PCs.
Right, it's so weird because it's like just I feel like the computers that the school gives out are particularly funky. I have my old laptop and it was fine for like 7 years, and this is one of the newer ones and it is crap. So I don't know what's going on.
Mine's been toast from the beginning. How do we feel like they're doing? I'm looking through their document here, and it looks like some of them are doing much better than others. But no, actually, it looks like most of them are doing really well. It looks like most of these slides have like several different some nice slides you got there, by the way, Maddie.
Thank you.
I kept a few of the originals
Mm-hmm.
just because. But and you know, I didn't end up copying these into the presentation because I almost felt like, well, just as well that the ones in the presentation are actually kind of different, so we're not telling them what they should have said on these.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
this woman Janice is pretty awesome. her interview is just so smoking. And she's actually one of the people who's going to be on our meeting this afternoon, Rowan. You saw that?
She's come.
I've never met her, but I just feel like she's kind of a superstar. Like everything she said in her interview is like almost quotable. You know, she's just like, yeah. That's funny. They don't have consistency here. That would be a good one for this one. Yeah, it's commitments, but it is that. All right, I think you want to dump them. Rowan, you have to dump them. And it may give you some timing on that. I would dump them sooner rather than later. There's like a 60-second default. I'd give them like 10 seconds. I'd just dump them. 10 seconds.
I can't.
Oh, here they're coming back. So you obviously got them.
Yeah. I think it gives them a prompt to come back.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you see people coming back on your end? It looks like we got most of people here, so I'm just gonna start, I guess. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, thank you. So hope you guys, it looked like you guys were doing a great job. It turns like it's not so easy for us to join you in your breakout groups, but you seem to be doing a great job. We were sort of watching you come up with principles, and it seems like people are really kind of getting how these slides are doing different things. And as I mentioned, what you really want to do is try to accomplish as many of those sort of communication principles as possible with a slide. But you know, usually you can only get 2 or 3 in there in a really big way in terms of principles. But you know, some of the slides do more than others. You know, just as some examples, you know, this is a slide that clearly is communicating a story that's very personal and local. You know, and everything counts. I just want to say that. I mean, how these owners of this local store are interacting with each other is as powerful in communicating important messages to the community as what's written on the screen. You know, their obvious affection for each other and everything else. It's all telling stories, and you just want to think about those stories. And, you know, really, I'm just putting the bullet points up here that are in the document. You know, we're emphasizing actions people can take and are taking, featuring local environmental impacts, emphasizing the economy, and you know, all of those things are coming across in that particular slide. You know, here's an example of another slide, another principle celebrating positive thought, emphasizing solutions rather than problems, appealing to the desire to be good people, featuring images of people being happy, proud, and engaged in their pro-environmental behavior. Here's one that, you know, many of these slides you'll notice really do feature diversity. Sharon Pearson, who was in our class last week, mentioned that she was one of the sort of initial developers of Community Voices. So she was very important in helping us figure out ways to do that best in the city of Oberlin. You know, as someone who's a lifelong Oberlin resident, she was a really good person to have on the project. But, you know, creating content that represents and resonates with different groups, you know, thinking carefully about target audiences and what's going to appeal to their distinct values. And there are lots of distinct values in Oberlin. We are, odd as it may seem to Oberlin students, a very religious community. We have like, I don't know, something like 20 churches in this little community here. So that's often a good way to connect with people, is through their church. Featuring people who are not necessarily heard from, so that we're getting the full diversity. You know, and we're not talking about just racial diversity here. We're talking economic diversity, age diversity, ableness diversity, all of those things, and including people who you might not consider as leaders. So lots of examples of that. Again, leveraging social norms. We can do that in a variety of ways. These are things we do now. These are things we've always done. That's a good thing about history, is it really does allow you to leverage the social norms of problems that your community has faced and overcome, or good things about your community that are a continuation of things your community has always done. You know, helping people to feel like they're part of something larger. Highlight the groups that people associate themselves with. So lots of good examples of that. A.G. Miller has been one of our star interviewees. He's a pastor of a local church, and he's a former Oberlin College professor. So he connects with lots of different communities within lots of different segments of the Oberlin community. This is a slide we've always found really particularly powerful, partly because it's very, very simple and powerful. This is the kind of message you can glance at for 2 seconds and you've absorbed content, important content that is likely to be affecting you. The shorter the text you can put on these things, the better. We have a 35-word limit on text, but really, if you can get it down below 20, you've got a more powerful message. Anyway, I'm just kind of going through these to reiterate the importance of these basic communication principles and how they play out with different content. And I hope that you guys got some good experience with that. So consistency is an important thing to understand. It really is a very well-tested psychological principle. People want to be consistent. If you can get them behaving in a certain way or feature people behaving in a certain way, people are going to want to be consistent with that. They will do all sorts of things to try to maintain consistency in their worldviews and actions. So finding ways to make that consistency elicit pro-environmental and pro-community behavior is really important. Aligning solutions that are being composed with the values of that particular and priorities of a particular group is really critical. Yeah, showing people that they're doing one thing and that would be consistent with doing something else that's bigger is really important. Like I say, people often think this is the most important. It's probably one of the less important ones, but it is important to appeal to people's self-interest. Oftentimes you can connect that self-interest with larger things like, I love this slide, I love gardening because you don't have to go to the store to buy stuff, you just pick it and eat it. It's a self-interested thing, but the rest of the photograph is all about sort of community and positive relationships. So it's actually covering other things besides just raw self-interest here. But yeah, it is an important principle. And just on the final core communication principle, really selecting images and text that are designed to engage. Pictures of people's faces, pictures of people's emotions, pictures that have some element in them that does kind of like jar and grab your attention is important, and then making sure that that content in the picture is consistent and helps you to tell the story that is in the text. The text and the image do not need to come from the same sources. So this, that quote may or may not relate to a kid who was involved in looking at goldfish in a glass. It doesn't really matter as long as they're consistent. You don't want to imply that the person in the photograph is necessarily the person talking. I don't think this one does that. You're not doing that. So you do need to be a little bit careful that you're not inadvertently claiming that the person in the photograph is necessarily the person that's talking. Unless they are, then of course it's fine. But you do want to engage, educate, and empower people with the images and text combination. So what I put up there is stuff you just looked at. Again, just trying to reinforce that. A little bit about the trajectory. So hopefully, I realize there's a lot of complexity in the assignment document, and probably a little overwhelming to look at that assignment document right now. I think you will find that as you proceed through the assignment, it'll make a lot more sense and won't seem so complicated because each step is just a step in the process. But this week, you are going to be starting with classmate interviews. So it is very, very important that today you communicate with your group members and that you collectively look at that sheet, that survey that's linked on the syllabus and in the materials for today, and sign up for all the times that you are potentially, that your group members are all able to meet with Maddie late this week, early next week, because that first conference is the context in which you will do your first interview. It's kind of a practice interview, but we're hoping to get real content that we may be able to feature some of the better content on the screen. So this is very important. It's kind of a hand-holding exercise. Maddie's going to be with you during the interview. You guys are going to do these very short interviews. You're going to develop some questions for those before Thursday. So that's another important piece of this assignment, this first assignment. And then as the semester progresses, you're going to follow that with an interview of an OC student. Maddie's been hard at work identifying students who are engaged in the larger community, so it's an opportunity for you to develop more skills, but also for you to get to know some other Oberlin students who are engaged in the local community and learn about the community in that way. And then the final piece is you're doing a community member interview. For every one of these interviews, you're being asked to develop questions that are targeted towards the people you're interviewing ahead of time, and you get feedback on those from Maddie and I and your classmates, and then conduct the interview and develop quotes and get feedback from your classmates and us on those quotes, and then pair slides, etc. So you're kind of doing a repeat 3 times, kind of building up to that community member interview, which is on the sort of thematic content of your group. Okay. Are there any questions on these assignments? Again, lots of details on these are explained in the assignment document, but are there any questions on sort of this week in particular before we move on to the second exercise?
This might be on the document, but when you say classmate interviews, who are we interviewing?
You will momentarily, in exercise 3, you're interviewing someone in your group. Group member A is interviewing group member C, group member B is interviewing group member D, and that is all linked on a document that we'll get to separately. And you're going to use the biographic information that each of you provided in your working group survey to be the basis for developing questions that you will ask them. But you will do those interviews in the context of the conference with Maddie. And yes, that is explained in the document, but thank you for asking that question. All right, so we're now going to move on to exercise 2. And the way this is going to work is instead of seeing photographs, what you're going to see is paragraphs. And maybe I'll just click on exercise 2, and we can take a quick look at that together. And you guys should do the same thing. Again, in the document that was shared with you for today, there's a link to exercise 2. And what you're going to see are some instructions here. And below those instructions are a set of paragraphs. This first one is just an example. It's a paragraph from an interview. So this is the question and the answer given by a community member. And your job is to highlight quotes within this article. And most of these paragraphs are actually taken from interviews that students in this class did last semester. So last semester students. So one of them was with Janice. Actually, we just saw a slide from Janice, who's a teacher in Prospect Elementary School, a pretty amazing woman. And this is a full paragraph transcribed from the student interview with her. And your job is identify good quotes in here, paste them down here, and then below that, paste, just as you did with the slides, the core communication principles illustrated and a description of how they're illustrating that. And again, you guys will have just 5 minutes for this. Focus on your paragraph. If you feel like you've gotten everything you can from your paragraph, your group number paragraph, then move on to the next one. But really try to glean. In most of these, there's at least 2 good quotes to be had from the paragraph. You guys good with this? It's pretty similar to the last exercise, but it's giving you a different piece of the work you're going to be doing in your interviews. You guys ready? Cal, get some coffee in your system there. All right, so Rowan, you want to stick these guys into groups? We're going to give you 5 minutes. I'm getting my watch going here. All right, there you go.
Okay, everybody should have an invite.
I wonder why we still have these guys hanging out with us. Emma, Hannah, what are you guys doing with us? Aren't you in your groups? There we go. Nee, go to your group.
I cannot.
Oh, you
I guess
can't.
because I came in late.
Oh, you're gonna have to stick Nee into his group. Okay, I think Rowan is in the process of doing that, so you're gonna want to join your group as soon as you get a little prompt to do so, Nee. There Nee goes. I think this is working okay. Yeah, I think our timing is not terribly off. Um, we may have to give them just abbreviate the third exercise. The third exercise, I think really, if we get them like to find the document that has all their biographic information in it and just look at yours, I think like really we're halfway there. I think we can give them like 2 minutes for that one or something. Because I think to me, like one of the main points of that is to prep them for Thursday and say, this is what you need to do for Thursday with your group member.
Mm-hmm. Run to the bathroom really fast.
Okay, sorry, my computer's like unbearably slow, so I'm staying muted for the
Well,
most
all I can say, Rowan, is hang in there because you're running the show. Hang in there because you're running the show.
I know. I'm clocked in. I'm aware, so don't worry. I'll keep
Yeah.
on the trigger here.
I gotta get my computer replaced too. I put a request in like 6 months ago and haven't heard a word back. They're actually doing some good stuff here. They're getting it. Yeah, you're muted, and I don't think you should unmute. But I will say, I think this exercise is going vastly better than it has in previous years. I think they're actually getting it.
Oh, also, we don't need to talk about this now. It's probably better not to. But I did edit a few things in that.
Oh,
in
great.
the
Yeah, I
assignment.
didn't see you in it, but yeah, I mean it did you make it like all the way through in a clean sweep? Because I think it does need
Yeah.
that. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Yeah. I
And
mean, I was doing a lot of editing actually very late last night on it too.
just
Oh, and what I did was I went ahead and created documents. I actually need to change the names, but each folder for them has one document, and not not 3 documents. I didn't want to confuse things, but it has the first document in it for them to work on, and it has a slot for questions. I don't know if you click the links, but like every, oh, you know what? Now that I think about it, I need to change sharing because I have a feeling that those are like read-only documents right now. Let me do that before we dump them from their groups. But actually, Rowan, you should dump them momentarily. Right, let me just do a share thing here. Share. just see if one of these things works. Oh, darn you. Okay, send them out, Rowan, if you haven't already done it. Oh, maybe that does work. Hey, how are you guys doing? Any comments on that exercise before we move on to our next and final exercise of the day? Anyone want to say anything about their experience? All right, well, go ahead. Someone's about to say something.
I was going to, is my camera facing me first of all?
No, it's facing, I don't know what it's facing, but it's not you. Hey, there you are, Noel.
Yeah. So I think this one was a bit more concentrated in what you could decipher out of it because there was the drop of multimedia from like image and quote to just quote.
Right.
So generally, because when someone's speaking, they want the focus, hone in on topic. This one was more straightforward to deduce one of the principles from.
Oh, interesting, because you had to actually find it though. So, but that's cool that you didn't seem to have any problem doing that. And we were sort of watching the documents that as you guys were filling them in, and it was clear that you guys are definitely getting the hang of this, which is great. The next exercise we're going to do, the last exercise we're going to do before we sort of focus a little bit more on kind of like nuts and bolts and wrap things up. And we're not going to give you much time for this, but partly what we want to do is get you ready for Thursday, is to think about developing questions. And the real trick here is you're trying to do three things with questions you ask. You're trying to elicit responses that are going to be valuable in terms of being consistent with the core communication principles. At least later in the semester, you're trying to sort of focus those on the topics that your groups are working on, not for the first two interviews, but for that last interview. And then you're also trying to develop questions that really relate to what you already know about your interviewee. And I actually didn't put the link in this one, but it doesn't matter because you guys have all the links. That's this one. So if everyone is looking at this here, on this particular one, we want to sort of prep you for your first interview this weekend. So you are being asked by Thursday to come up with questions for your interviewee. And as practice, we're asking you to come up with questions for Maddie. So if you click on this classmate biographical information sheet here, you will see that it's got bio on all of you, and it's from all of you. So this is the information you provided to us, what you like in Oberlin, city likes and stuff. And if you go down to 29 here, someone's honking, you're going to see that Maddie's in here. Maddie's going to be working with group 7 because they've got a group of 3. So Liz, you're going to have a bazillion questions that you'll be able to draw from interviewing Maddie. The green here, by the way, is who's doing the interview. The gray is who's being interviewed. So this is your interview pairs for the weekend. But you've got a bunch of information here for Maddie, and within your group, you now have about 2 minutes to come up with good interview questions, and we're going to keep it tight because we want to make sure we wrap up the workshop with a little bit of overall advice. So Rowan, if you would be kind enough to send folks into their groups, that would be that would be good. Yeah, so a bunch of you are still here with us. You guys should go, hopefully you guys, let us know if you're having problems, but you guys all should have been invited to go into a group. Hillary, are you stuck with us?
Yeah, it kicked me out of the meeting because
Oh, I kicked you out of the meeting. Rowan, can you, what group are you in, Hillary?
no, I've got one now. It's group 2.
Oh, okay, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's funny how you can see all of them sitting on this link here. Kind of a weird thing. Maddie, we're going to see the exciting questions that they have for you. Don't look though, you're going to lose the whole surprise element here.
So I'm so curious.
And the whole class is focused on you right now, Maddie. You. Let's just see what we got left here in terms of wrapping. So we've only got Maddie, basically you're on for the next 2 slides when we get them back. Are you ready to be on for those 2 slides?
Yeah, and I can make it very, very quick.
Yeah, that's great. And if I have like half a minute at the end, and we really will, you have like basically, I mean, as soon as we see them getting as soon as we see every group have a question here, I say we dump them from the thing. It looks like where are they right now? Oops, why can't I find the right exercise? Looks like actually very few of them have a question yet. Looks like we got 1 question. Oh, group 5 is very productive here. Yeah, some of them seem like they're not really going to elicit core communication content like this one. How have you been able to find ways to connect your 2 majors? Maybe that might go someplace actually. Who knows? Group number 6 is not very functional. Huh. Looks like group 9 is not going to bother asking you a question.
That's all right.
Yeah, I wonder why group 10 can't get their act together to type something. I say you dump them now. Because we're down to the wire. 7 minutes. You've already dumped them, right? Well, the fact that they're not anxious to be dumped is a good thing, I guess.
Yeah, they have 30 seconds.
but they must be really engaged because they're not, other than Jonathan and Elena, most of them are still in there. Well, here they come. Elena, you've got your groovy background there again.
I got my cow lights.
That's very important. You got to have good cow lights in life. Oh, and you believe that too, don't you? All right. Maddie is on for the tail end of this workshop.
Alrighty, so yeah, I'm just going to go over an outline for the conferences that are coming up this weekend. So we have very limited time. We only have 30 minutes and we have a lot to do. So please come on time, number one. But yeah, once you guys arrive, we're going to go straight into quick introductions, make it snappy, and then we're going to start with just a quick interview of me. So whatever questions you came up with in this past exercise, or if you have any others, and then and you can ask whatever you want. And then the next part is interviewing each other. So as John was saying, you've been split into pairs, and so the first pair is for 10 minutes. The first pair is going to interview each other, and not at the same time. It's like 5 minutes for the first person, 5 minutes for the second person. And then the next 10 minutes will be the other pair. And then we'll hopefully have around 10 minutes to just discuss what happened, what went well, what didn't go well, and I'll provide some feedback. And also I'd hope that you, like all you groups like you guys, provide feedback for your group members as well. Yeah, so that's basically what the weekend is going to be. And also I'll have, sorry, but I'll have these recorded. So I know that 10 minutes is a lot of time for feedback. So if you want some more, I'd be happy to review the session and send you some more. All right, so 6 ways to create a good interview. Basically a lot of the things that I'm going to be discussing are during the interview, but one thing that I just want to mention is that I think that like a really important step to creating a good interview is preparation beforehand. So you want to know the questions you're asking, you want to know the person you're interviewing pretty well, given the information that you have about them. And you also want, and also about the questions, you want to try and memorize them. And so just basically you have like a good foundation for the interview. But then during the interview, you want to make them comfortable. So, sorry, just lost my place. Yeah, so you want to start with small talk at the beginning of the interview and try to create some sort of connection and like some, just to ease everyone into the interview, yourself and your interviewee. And you also want to give them an overview about what you're going to be doing. And you also want to be engaged with what they're saying, just generally. Use body language, nod your head, make sure that they know that you're listening and engaged. And then the next part is keeping them focused but open. Again, you kind of have control over the interview, but you want to but you also want them to be able to say all that they want to say. So ask clarifying questions. Can you speak more about that? Or and don't be afraid to ask questions more than once. If they haven't quite answered the question that you ask, you can keep on going and keep on pushing. And then for difficult questions, guide their answer with your own examples. So it can sometimes make them more comfortable to talk about things if you like add some personal experience to it. And yeah.
Thanks, Maddie. Those are real words of wisdom for people to sort of bring into their interview. Obviously, during your first interview, your opportunity to do a lot of these things is time constrained. So many of these are probably a little bit more important for your later interviews. But yeah, this is sort of the end of our workshop today. I hope that what we provided today is something that actually be sort of reinforced as you prepare for Thursday's class, when we'll have Cindy Franson. We will be back in our normal classroom live with each other. And think about what was presented today and the readings for today as you do the readings for Thursday, because we'll have a real live social psychologist in class on Thursday to help us get a better understanding of kind of psychological systems and how important they are. You know, how important it is to understand psychological systems in order to bring about change, and how the sort of environmental dashboard project and community voices in particular really leverages what we know from research in social psychology. So thanks, guys. Look forward to seeing you. I'll just make one little plug. A couple things going on Friday that I mentioned in an email to you last night, and I urge you to take a look at that email. A bunch of you have signed up for the networking event on Friday. That unfortunately is space limited, so if you're interested in that, the sooner you respond, the more likely you are to actually have a space if you want to participate in that. So take care. See you guys on Thursday.
Thank you.
Someone's honking there. You alive, Rowan? You're good. Your computer's yeah, you're gone. That's good.